The sterile smell of the hospital room prickles my senses as I gradually swim up from the depths of darkness into a haze of muted sounds and blurred visions. A year has vanished in the abyss of a coma, and with it, a life I thought was mine to keep. My sister Ava is the first face I recognize, her expression a mingled relief and sorrow that doesn't reach her eyes. "Nate, you're back," she whispers, squeezing my hand too tightly. I try to speak, but my throat is sandpaper, raw and unused. A nurse, noticing my struggle, offers me water with a gentle, practiced smile. As I sip, the clarity doesn't come just to my throat, but also to my ears. Ava is talking again. "Everyone missed you so much, Nate. It's been complicated." Complicated is a word that feels too small for the return from death's quiet neighbor. I want to ask 1,000 questions, but I manage only one. "Sarah?" My voice is a ghost of itself, hoarse and faint. Ava's face shifts, a subtle hardening of her features. "Sarah. She's been dealing with everything as best she could." "Is she here?" I ask, my heart hammering with the need to see my wife, to confirm she's real, that this isn't just another layer of dream. "No," Ava says, avoiding my eyes. "She's not." The room suddenly feels colder, the beeping monitors intrusive as they pierce the silence with their relentless rhythm. I push myself up, ignoring the dizziness that clings to the fringes of my vision. "Why?" "It's complicated, Nate." Ava's tone is gentle, yet it holds a finality that makes me press no further. Weeks pass, and with them, my strength returns. I learn to walk again, to feed myself, to live in a body that feels both familiar and alien. Sarah visits, but each encounter is strained, her smiles forced and her visits brief. Something is off, and the gap between us widens with every awkward conversation. It's during one of these stilted visits that my best friend, Mark, drops by. He hesitates when he sees Sarah, then pulls me aside. His voice is low, urgent. "Nate, there's something you need to know." "What?" I brace against the bed, the four-line tugging at my arm. "It's about Sarah, and your brother, Alex." A cold seed of dread plants itself in my stomach. "What about them?" They've been together, Nate." "Not just now." "Since you were out." "It was everywhere, man." The room spins, a carousel of betrayal. "Together how, Mark?" "Tell me." "Look, everyone thought you might not wake up. They started being together. It got serious." "Serious?" My voice cracks, broken glass in my throat. "Moving in together serious. I thought you should know, from someone who cares about you." Sarah returns then, her eyes darting between Mark's grimace and my shock. "Nate, I can explain. But I don't want to hear it. Not now. The betrayal is too fresh, too raw. I see her now, not as my wife, but as someone else entirely. In the days that follow, the decision forms like a cancer in my mind. Betrayed and furious, I resolve not to let this deception define me. Instead, I'll redefine it. Sarah's life, so intricately woven with mine and now with Alex's, will unravel by my own hands. I will break her world as she broke mine. A divorce, swift and merciless, is just the beginning. As I sign the papers, my signature steady despite the shaking of my soul, I vow never to see Sarah again. The chapter of us is closed, sealed within the sterile white walls of a hospital room where I woke to find my life overturned. The cold morning air bites at my cheeks as I leave the lawyer's office, the divorce papers now a reality tucked into my briefcase. The city bustles around me, indifferent to the seismic shift in my life. I walk without direction, every step ringing a discordant echo in my hollow chest. I don't notice her at first, the elderly lady who slips on the icy sidewalk just ahead of me. Instinctively, I reach out, catching her arm before she hits the ground. "Oh, bless you, young man." Her gratitude is warm, her grip surprisingly strong as she steadies herself. "Are you all right?" I ask, concerned. "Yes, thanks to you." Tell me it, she introduces herself with a smile that crinkles the corners of her eyes. Nate, I reply, offering her my arm for support. As we walk slowly down the street, Margaret chats about the neighborhood, pointing out changes she's witnessed over decades. Her easy talk is a balm, and for a moment, I forget the turmoil awaiting me at home. At her doorstep, she pauses. Would you come in for some coffee, Nate? You look like you could use a friendly ear. Grateful, I nod. Inside, her home is a cozy clutter of photos and knickknacks, each piece with a story that Margaret shares eagerly. Over coffee, the conversation turns, as it inevitably does, to the corners of her eyes. A hurt must be visible because Margaret's tone softens. You seem troubled, dear. If you ever need to talk. I hesitate, then the floodgates open. I tell her everything about the coma, Sarah, Alex, and the bitter end of my marriage. Margaret listens, her brow furrowed. Life throws us into the deep end sometimes, she says, her hand reaching across the table to squeeze mine. But remember, the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. You survived a coma, Nate. You'll survive this betrayal too. Her words are kind, but as I leave, the weight of revenge still burns bright within me. I decide my next move, I will confront Alex. He owes me an explanation, brother or not. The confrontation happened sooner than planned. I spot Alex at a local bar that evening, laughing over drinks with friends as if his betrayal was nothing but a minor indiscretion. Alex! My voice cuts through the chatter, sharp and clear. He turns, his smile fading when he sees me. Nate, No, you listen, I interrupt, anger boiling over. How could you? My wife? While I was lying in a hospital? Alex looks around, embarrassed. Let's talk outside. In the alley beside the bar, I press him against the cold brick wall. Why? The single word is a demand, heavy with hurt. Alex exhales, his breath a cloud in the chilly air. I never planned it, Nate. It just happened. You were gone, and we were there for each other. It wasn't right, but it wasn't all wrong either. His words sting, a justification that doesn't sit right with me. And you thought I wouldn't wake up? You hoped I wouldn't? No. It wasn't like that, Alex protests, his voice desperate. I want you out of my life, Alex. For good, I state coldly, pushing away from him. And tell Sarah she'll get what she deserves. As I walk away, my mind races with plans. Sarah and Alex's deceit won't go unpunished. But how? The question consumes me as I head into the night, the city lights blurring into streaks of anger and resolve. As dawn creeps over the city skyline, the early light finds me at my computer, researching. My fingers dance across the keyboard, tapping into social media, bank accounts, and emails, anything that can give me leverage against Sarah and Alex. The bitter taste of betrayal fuels my determination. The doorbell rings, an unexpected interruption. I glance through the peephole and see Mark, looking anxious. Opening the door, I raise an eyebrow in silent question. Can we talk? He asks, shifting uncomfortably. It's important. Come in, I motion, leading him to the living room. Mark takes a seat, his hands clasped tightly. Look, Nate, I know you're hurting. But this path you're on. What are you planning? I look at him sharply. What did you think I would do? They destroyed my life, Mark. I'm just returning the favor. Nate, revenge isn't going to heal you. It's going to consume you, Mark argues, his voice earnest. I don't need healing, I need justice, I snap, my gaze cold. Mark sighs, frustrated. And what about after? What then? You'll still be without a wife, without a brother, and you'll lose a friend too, because I can't watch you do this. His words sting, a reminder of everything I've lost. But the hurt only hardens my resolve. If you're not with me, then you're against me. Is that it? No, but Mark starts, but I cut him off. That it? You should leave, I say, standing up. The finality in my voice is clear. Mark looks at me, sadness etching his features, then nods and leaves without another word. As the door shuts, the silence settles heavy around me. I shake off the feeling, turning back to my computer. Hours blur as I dig deeper. Finally, I find something, a series of emails between Sarah and a real estate agent about purchasing a property in her name only, paid for with funds that seem questionable. A sharp grin cuts across my face. This could be it, the leverage I need. I print out the emails, my plan taking shape. Later that afternoon, I drive to the property, a sleek, modern townhouse in a trendy part of the city. Sarah's car is parked outside. Taking a deep breath, I approach the door and ring the bell. Sarah answers, surprise flickering over her face when she sees me. "Nate? What are you?" "We need to talk," I say firmly, pushing past her into the house. "What is this about?" she asks, her voice a mix of defiance and fear as she follows me into the kitchen. "This," I say, slamming the printouts on the marble countertop. Her eyes flick over the documents, widening with realization. "Nate, I can explain," she starts, but I cut her off. "Save it." "I know everything," I declare, watching her closely. "And I'm willing to keep this quiet, under one condition." "What condition?" she asks, a tremor in her voice. "You sign over the townhouse to me," I state. "Consider it payment for your betrayal." Sarah bristles, anger replacing her fear. "You can't blackmail me into giving you this house." "Watch me," I retort coldly. "You have 2 days to decide, Sarah. If not, everyone will know about your little financial indiscretions." As I leave, the weight of my threats hangs in the air, a dark cloud that shadows both our futures. I drive away from the townhouse, not feeling the victory I expected, only a deeper hollow in the pit of my stomach. But there's no turning back now. The pieces are in play, and I must see this through to the end. The relentless ticking of the clock in my darkened living room mirrors the relentless beat of my heart as I await Sarah's decision. Each tick is a reminder of the rapidly closing window she has to comply with my demand. 2 days have passed when my phone finally buzzes. It's Sarah. "I'll sign the house over," she says, her voice strained, "but only if we meet in person. I need to explain things, Nate. You deserve that much." Curiosity piqued, I agree to meet her at a small, out-of-the-way cafe the following morning. The public setting suggests she isn't planning anything underhanded, but I remain cautious. I arrive early, sitting with a clear view of the entrance. Sarah walks in shortly after, her posture rigid, her eyes searching. Spotting me, she takes a deep breath and approaches. As she sits, I notice the lines of stress etched deeply around her eyes. "So, explain," I prompt coldly. Sarah takes a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I did meet someone while you were in the coma, Nate. But it wasn't Alex." I frown, confusion mixing with the simmering anger. "What are you talking about?" "Mark told me." "It wasn't true," she cuts in. "Alex and I never had anything romantic. It was all a misunderstanding, a rumor that spiraled out of control. Alex was helping me deal with everything, including the harassment I started receiving once the rumors began." Her words hit like a wave, confusion and doubt churning in their wake. "Harassment? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to," she insists, "but you woke up, and everything was so fragile. Then, when you found out, you didn't give me a chance to explain. You just shut me out." I stare, trying to piece together her story with what I know. It sounds plausible, yet something doesn't sit right. "And the townhouse? Why buy it in your name only?" Sarah sighs, her fingers trembling slightly as she reaches for her coffee. "It was meant to be a surprise, for us. After everything, I thought a fresh start in a new place could save our marriage. I used my inheritance. I didn't think it would look suspicious." The cafe buzzes around us, the normalcy of the scene at odds with the turmoil inside me. "Why didn't you fight harder to tell me all this before?" "I tried, but you were so hurt, so angry." I thought giving you space might help, but it only made things worse. I'm sorry, Nate. I truly am. The sincerity in her eyes pierces the fog of my suspicions. I'm left grappling with the enormity of my misjudgments. Had my desire for vengeance blinded me to the truth? Silence stretches between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, I speak, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I can move past this, Sarah. Too much has happened. Too much has been said. I know, she replies quietly. I don't expect you to forgive me or to come back. I just wanted you to know the truth. We part ways, the finality of the encounter settling around us like dust. She heads one way, I the other, the chasm of our shared history and recent strife too wide to bridge. Days turn into weeks. I often find myself at Margaret's, her wise words providing some comfort. But the shadows of what I lost linger. I think about Mark, about Alex, and the misunderstanding that tore everything apart. One evening, as Margaret pours us tea, she says, "You know, Nate, sometimes the truth we avoid becomes the monster we can't escape. But it's never too late to make things right with those who are still willing to listen." Her words strike a chord. The next day, I call Mark, my voice shaky as I ask for a meeting. We sit in the same cafe where Sarah and I last spoke, the air filled with the tension of unresolved conflicts. "I'm sorry," I begin, "for not listening, for everything." Mark nods, his expression thoughtful. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, Nate. Let's move forward, not back." As I leave the cafe, a weight lifted from my shoulders, I realize that while some paths have diverged forever, others might still lead back to reconciliation. My steps are lighter, the city around me a little less daunting. The deception had clouded everything, but now, as those clouds begin to part, I start to see the possibility of a future shaped not by the deception of the past, but by the truths I choose to accept and the forgiveness I choose to offer.